Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Loretta Smith, and I'm the Multnomah County Commissioner for District 2 here in Multnomah County. And I want to thank everybody for coming out this morning. I know you all could have been other places like the NC2A Championships. Yay! But we're here to talk about some very serious business. And it's about jobs, 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 and more jobs. And I want to thank Senator Wyden and thank Senator Merkley for their leadership in passing the Secure Rural Schools legislation in the Senate. For those of you who don't know, Senator Wyden, he passed this legislation in 2000. And it was a way for him to ensure that the federal government paid their historic obligation to rural communities. Thanks to his efforts and Senator Merkley's efforts, Oregon counties and school districts have received millions of dollars, and they've retained law enforcement. And just last week, Senator Wyden, Senator Merkley, they led a bipartisan coalition of senators in getting a one-year extension of this program. Now, we hope that the House goes along, and I hope they certainly do. And if they do, it will bring $100 million into this community. And that's why we're here today, and want to pass this on to Senator Wyden. Thank you.
Now, St. Patrick's Day weekend ought to be a filibuster-free zone, and so I'm just going to make a couple of comments. Senator Merkley have a couple of comments, and then we've got our friends from the counties to really lay out what this is going to mean for people, and jobs, and communities across Oregon. Let me just start by, under the best of circumstances, it is always hard to figure out what's going on in Washington, D.C. But especially in a presidential election year, it's a challenge. And so I and Senator Merkley and our counties wanted to make sure that folks really understood what this issue means for Oregonians and what it means right now. And what this issue is about is essentially 100 years ago, decades and decades ago, in effect, an agreement was entered into between the federal government and our part of the world that we'd have a federal forest system, and everybody in America could enjoy it. But in return, we'd be able to pay for our schools and our roads and our law enforcement. And Oregon, because this is where God put the trees, Oregon had a special interest in it because so much of our land is owned by the federal government. And so literally decades and decades ago, there was an agreement made that we get money for our schools and roads and transportation systems so that people who lived in Detroit and Tallahassee and all over the United States could come and enjoy our forests. That worked pretty darn well for decades. But by 2000, we weren't in a position to pay for those essential services. So I wrote a bill then, it's called the Secure Rural Schools Bill, and I rewrote the version in 2008 so we could pick up more support. And then I rewrote another version just in the last few months so that we could build on it and particularly make a transition so that we'd have time for some other approaches that would create jobs in the woods. And it has been hugely, hugely helpful to have Senator Merkley part of our delegation because he has been out on the floor speaking about this. He's a boy from Roseburg, so he understands what this really means to Oregon communities. And of course, because he was a state legislator, he understands what this means for counties and for schools. And what we want folks to understand is that we are not here to tell counties and school districts how to do their job. But if the House of Representatives doesn't do its job, what this means for Oregon is less law enforcement, we're going to have reduced road maintenance, and we are going to have fewer quality teachers in our classrooms. And that is unacceptable to us, and it ought to be unacceptable to Oregonians in every single part of the state. And what you're going to hear today is, in effect, our counties are having to look at the prospect of two budgets right now. And in fact, there was just a report out of Lane County yesterday that as early as next month, they are talking about having to set in motion layoffs. So this is not an abstract kind of issue. That was a report just out of Lane County. So we'd be looking in our state over the next few months at the prospects of two budgets. Local school districts and counties could write one budget with secure rural schools in it, and they could write another budget without secure rural schools in it, and that we think is unacceptable. Now, there's a particularly important point that Oregon State University researchers have made in this area. We've got the report available for all of you here today. It's actually more significant even than the figures we used in 2000 and 2008, but according to this recent report from the researchers at Oregon State University, without reauthorization of the timber payments program, we would be looking at the prospect of losing 3,800 to 4,400 direct jobs in our state, and then hundreds of millions of dollars lost to our economy. So we are going to make that report available to everybody here today. And we've also been briefed by our state education officials that they would lose millions of dollars in state education funds. And because in our state, the money for secure rural schools goes to the Common School Fund, what we've been told is this could affect educators in every part of the state in terms of what we need to do to protect our people, and particularly law enforcement, road maintenance, and schools. So that's going to be the end of my speechifying, and I'm just, again, so pleased that I can turn on my C-SPAN and Senator Merkley will be out on the floor of the United States Senate pounding away on this cause, that this is not some kind of handout, folks. You know, I hear a lot as well as Oregon getting some special deal. Oregon has made it possible for people all over the United States to enjoy the forests. People, if you're on the east coast of the United States, you get to come and enjoy our forests, and all we have said is we've got to make sure in return that the people of our state don't fall between the cracks. So my partner in this effort, Senator Jeff Merkley.
It takes me back 5 years ago when I was Speaker of the House and I organized a bipartisan, bicameral delegation of state legislators to go out and visit timber counties. And it was in the spring, as now, and we talked to county after county, and I thought I'd just bring back a little bit of what was going on at that point. Josephine County, 2/3 of the county's general fund came from county payments. So loss of county payments meant cutting public safety programs. And overnight patrols were cut down to just 6 individuals to cover an area the size of the state of Rhode Island. In Lake County, where federal land makes up 61% of the county, they cut their federal road department from 42 individuals to 14. 14 for a road department covering an area the size of Connecticut and Delaware combined. In Jackson County, where 1/3 of the general fund comes from federal payments, the county eliminated 117 jobs in parks, human services, roads, public safety, and they closed all of their libraries. These are just a sampling of 5 years ago before Senator Wyden was able to drive through the renewal. We are seeing we are on the verge of this similar precipice now for counties across the state, several of which are going to speak to us. So a critical time where we need to be getting out the message that the House must act on the bill that the Senate has passed. We don't need a transportation continuing resolution that doesn't incorporate all the good work the Senate has done and particularly doesn't pass county payments. We need to have a transportation bill that incorporates county payments. We need it for Oregon, we need it for counties and for states across this nation, and we will be continuing to work with all of you, all of our county leaders and our city leaders and our colleagues across this country to make sure that this transportation bill gets done and that the county payments secure rural schools program gets renewed. Thank you.
I'm Ann Leininger, one of the Clackamas County Commissioners. Do you know how much of Clackamas County's land is federally owned? It's more than half. And in its heyday, we got about $10 million in federal timber payments, about half of which went to road maintenance and the rest went to support other key services like public safety. So now we're looking at potentially having nothing more. Or this wonderful work through can move forward and a lot of important work in Clackamas County can continue, and that means public safety and road maintenance. We have 5 community corrections officers who we backfilled and funded in the last year, and if we have these timber payments continue, we can make sure we continue those jobs. We have a veteran services officer position that's helping some of the thousands of returning veterans who've served our country and now need us to help them get back into their lives so that they can succeed and take care of their families. And we need to keep that position, and if we don't keep those timber payments, that's going to be very hard to do. We have thousands of miles of roads that need maintenance, and we need to maintain that road. And if we don't do it now, not only will we lose the jobs of people who work on and maintain those roads, but they'll deteriorate to a point at which it will be much more expensive for us to fix the roads in the end. So it will be a much more expensive proposition. And last of all, you know how many women who sought shelter from domestic violence last year in Clackamas County had to be turned away for lack of space? 1,700 callers who were seeking emergency shelter had to be turned away for lack of space. If we have this county timber payment revenue, we can serve many more of those families and keep our communities safe and keep our communities working and keep our roads in the repair that we need. So we are grateful to Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley, and we look forward to celebrating with the House of Representatives when they do the right thing and pass this legislation with the timber payments intact. Thanks.
Good morning, Commissioner Hyde, Chair of the County Commissioners in Columbia County. And first of all, I want to thank our senators for forming such a great team around this very important issue. Just saw a report from the Department of Commerce talking about new jobs that are created in different sectors all across the country. And I was really, I don't want to say heartened, but misery loves company. And I was heartened to see that local government, and it was one of those glaring graphs, local government, unlike all the others that have some or major job increases, is down 364%. So we're already on the ropes. And losing this money to Columbia County means that now that we have 600 square miles with 2 deputies at any given time, we'll have no deputies at any given time patrolling our rural areas, which is roughly half of the county. On top of that, we're already at a point where we are open 4 days a week. If you come to the courthouse in Columbia County on Fridays, you will find a closed door. That's with the timber payments. Without the timber payments, the dire budget that we have created and a shadow budget with them is not something that I want to face, and I'm sure that my colleagues do not want to face this as well. This is a point in time in our budget when the services that we provide, and we're the delivery system for state and federal services as well as county services, the services we provide are at a premium in terms of need because of the economy having such a downturn. And this is a time when we're the least able to provide those services. So I applaud the effort that's coming from our senators, really understanding the issue that we have in the state of Oregon, and by the way, 400 other counties across the nation that this bill would affect. And I really appeal to the House to follow the lead and get this transportation bill with the reauthorization back. Thank you.
Well said, Tony.
Commissioner Craig Polk, Polk County. I represent one of the little brother counties in this state, but seriously not nearly in as dire straits as some of our smaller little brother counties like Josephine, Curry, and Coos. My county has already been practicing the budget cut processes that are necessary, expecting that we will not get our federal timber payments. And we started that in last year's budget. We don't run dual budgets, but we do run a budget with full expectation to make the cuts. The pink slips will go out on time with the restorative backfill component, that in the possibility that we should get those dollars, we will be able to restore some of those positions. We will cut as much as 15% of our Sheriff's Office patrol, for example. We've already made significant cuts in our jail, down to the point where it's a significant problem for our employees. If someone calls in sick in the jail, takes sick time, we have people that must work double duty in order to make certain that we meet our standard statutory responsibilities to keep that jail operating. But our patrols are already at a point, as Commissioner Hyde just pointed out, we're at a point now where we're getting minimal service on 24-hour shifts. It's expected that for our 2012-2013 budget, we will not have a 24-hour-a-day service from our sheriff's office. It will relate to cuts in the district attorney's office, which means we will not be able to prosecute some of the arrests that are made simply because we won't have the staff to do it. And all of this goes on through corrections. It also applies to, for our county, applies to some of the other services that we support, which is economic development issues, for example. We will not have the staff on hand in economic development and community development components where we issue building permits, for example. All of these cuts relate to all of our folks on the ground and how they are able to produce ongoing jobs in the future. If we're not able to help them with their permit processes and get through all of their needs, it just takes longer for those things to happen. So yes, we all feel, in county governments, feel the effect of losing our key people in places where we're already at minimal service levels, but all of this is going to relate to what our citizens are going to feel. And I would remind everybody that we have statutory responsibilities, as was pointed out. Counties do have, by law, responsibilities to support these services, yet we are losing the funding that keep the people in place that get those services met. So we have people stacking 2 and 3 deep on their levels of responsibilities to get the services met on a daily basis. I want to thank the senators for all of their hard work. They've done a terrific job. Believe me, I've had a lot of people tell me, I don't know why you spend your time on this. This is a losing proposition. There's no possible way you guys will ever see this money. So hooray for these guys. They've done a terrific job on that. I would also say that hooray for our congressional delegation as well that have worked extremely hard this year in trying to make certain that they get the House to understand all of our needs as we move forward. So I'm very enlightened about our possibilities. It isn't always doom and gloom, and I will say that we have great opportunities to see some real work. I would just hope that as we move forward, we can get past the one-year extension issue. So this is great, but we're already looking to the next year, so we'll all be working together trying to figure out a way. Thank you so much.
Eric Schmidt, I'm with the Association of Oregon Counties, and I would just like to say very briefly that when Senator Wyden wrote the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act in 2000, it included 42 other states besides Oregon. Yes, Oregon gets a big piece of the pie, but there are a lot of other states around the country that benefit from this act. And to have it reauthorized is going to benefit all of those states as well. And thank you for doing that, Senator. And thank you, Senator Merkley, for your hard work on this as well. As my commissioners have said, they're in the process of putting their budgets together. The uncertainty of not knowing whether or not this federal funding is going to be coming their way is making that budget process that much harder. And they're also being pressured by the fact that the vital public services that counties provide could be in danger without some of this funding. Yes, some of the counties that in the southwestern corner of the state, you mentioned Lane County, Curry County is definitely part of it, Josephine County, they will have problems whether or not this is reauthorized. That's a situation that we're dealing with at the state level, and our congressional delegation is helping us with that as well. It is a serious problem, and we hope that we will have a good outcome on this. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Wyden, Senator Merkley. I'd like to take this opportunity to share my support for the extension of the Secure Rural Schools Act. My name is Greg Jackal, and I'm a locally elected school board official from John Day, Oregon. I also represent Eastern Oregon for the Oregon School Boards Association. Region 1 takes into account 6 Oregon counties, which all contain large tracts of national forest. These public lands include Malheur National Forest, the Umatilla National Forest, and the Wallowa National Forest. The economies of these 6 counties are national resource based and rely heavily on direct and indirect income from these public lands. And since 2000, the 33 school districts in this region have benefited from the passage of Senator Wyden's original Secure Rural Schools Act. This act has provided funding to rural economies to account for declining timber receipts. Since 2000, there's been a gradual decline of residents from rural areas, including John Day. Due to lack of employment, the current economic crisis in this country is facing also has hit the rural economies hard. Declining enrollment and flat state funding for education has negatively impacted Grant School District 3 and its budget. In the last 3 years, Grant District 3 will have cut over $1 million, or 14% of our operating budget. Our local school board was forced to make the decision to close one of our junior highs and consolidate students. As well, we have reduced our staff by 10%. Further cuts will dramatically impact students in our schools unless we receive additional revenue. We simply have no more cuts to make that would not fully impact programs. I will close by saying there is hope in our rural areas. Our local junior, senior high school, with assistance from county and state government, as well as private businesses, recently installed a biomass boiler to heat our school. This will heat our school during the winter months and save us considerable cost in fuel. The pellets that will feed this boiler come from a new plant in John Day. The wood to make the pellets come from the adjacent National Forest. The workers to extract and produce this product are local, and they have kids that will attend our schools. I want to join Senator Wyden in calling on the U.S. House of Representatives to renew the Secure Rural Schools Act immediately. Thank you.
When I wrote this legislation originally, back in 2000, we had a surplus. So Senator Merkley and I are acutely aware of the fact that these are tough times, and we've got to make tough choices. So what we have said is, first of all, the federal government can't walk away from an obligation, and that was what I described earlier. But we are very open to additional approaches, particularly getting folks back to work in the woods and active management, thinning out the millions and millions of acres of overstocked stands, getting to the mills and putting people back to work. But what we especially want to convey this morning is that even the strongest advocates of that approach, and I've already tried to do it on the east side of Oregon, will tell you that that's not going to produce money for the schools and the law enforcement people and the roads for several years. We can't afford to let all of these communities fall between the cracks as we look to additional approaches, particularly getting people back to work in the woods. So we're for both. We're for recognizing this historic obligation. We want to make changes, particularly you talk about John Day, and we got a chance to get people back to work in the woods, thin out those stands, get rid of some of the lawsuits that have held up opportunities to get back in the woods. We're interested in those kinds of things. But a lot of those communities, if we don't get this help this year and have something in effect for the transition, a lot of those communities are telling us they won't be around. They won't be around in order to have the longer-term debate about some of these approaches like active management and biomass and getting folks back into the woods. We don't have the luxury of waiting. We've got to do both. And that's why we've said today, we're not going to tell these folks how to do their jobs. They're very good at it. But if the House of Representatives doesn't do its job, we want Oregon to know that this means less law enforcement, reduced road maintenance, fewer quality educators in the classroom, and that is unacceptable to the two of us, and that's what the fight's about.
But in a year, likely be talking about it again.
In a year, we've got a chance, for example, to lay out an opportunity for active management. Our original bill, by the way, for reauthorization now was 5 years. We got more than 30 United States senators of both political parties on it. So I've always had bipartisan support for this, back since the days with Senator Larry Craig with the first bill. But we've got to have a chance to make sure that our communities aren't sacrificed now, this year, the next couple of years, while we look at these other kinds of approaches. Jeff?
I think a much more appropriate analogy is a lifeline. And it's a lifeline so essential because a number of counties might well declare bankruptcy if this is the last check into the current program has already been received. And one may say, hey, it's just for a year and this battle has to go on, but we're looking at many federal programs now where we're having conversations about a 1-month extension, a 2-month extension. That's how dire the federal budget is. So to win this 1-year extension is actually a significant victory. And we won it with 82 out of 100 senators voting for it. That's an enormous bipartisan stamp of, yes, this federal commitment must be honored. And that also helps convey momentum for the battle we'll fight a year from now.